Previously on The Forgotten Chains. In episode 2, Raiders of the Shore, we journey to Africa's eastern coastline, where another terrifying chapter unfolded. Along the shores of the Indian Ocean, entire communities lived under the constant fear of sudden raids. Armed slave hunters descended on villages without warning, capturing men, women, and children before transporting them to coastal slave markets. We explored how thriving ports such as Kilwa, Zanzibar, and other trading centers became major gateways in the Indian Ocean slave trade. Families were torn apart in moments. Children disappeared forever. Villages that had flourished for generations were left abandoned as survivors fled inland in search of safety. This episode also revealed that these raids were not isolated events. They were part of a highly organized trade network driven by profit and sustained by powerful merchants, local collaborators, and international demand. The slave ships waiting offshore depended on the violence that began deep within Africa's coastal communities. Perhaps most importantly, we discovered the lasting consequences. Entire regions were depopulated, traditional societies were destabilized, and the fear of capture shaped daily life for countless generations. As heartbreaking as these events were, they raise an important question. Who carried out these raids? How did ordinary people become professional slave hunters? And what happened to the kingdoms forced to defend themselves against this relentless threat? Those answers await us in episode 3, Kingdoms Under Siege. Here, we'll explore how African kingdoms struggled to survive as slave raiding transformed politics, warfare, and the destiny of an entire continent. And now, next, Kingdoms Under Siege.
Welcome to episode 3, Kingdoms Under Siege. For generations, African kingdoms flourished. Great cities rose from the savannas. Merchants crossed deserts carrying gold, salt, ivory, and knowledge. Scholars filled libraries. Kings governed vast territories. Families cultivated fertile lands. But beneath this prosperity lurked a growing danger, a danger that would transform entire regions, a danger that would leave villages abandoned, kingdoms weakened, and millions living in fear. The slave trade was not sustained merely by merchants and markets. It required a constant supply of human beings, and that demand turned entire kingdoms into battlegrounds. This is the story of Africa's kingdoms under siege. Chapter 1, The Growing Demand. The demand for enslaved Africans grew steadily across centuries. To the north, caravans crossed the Sahara, carrying captives to markets in North Africa and in the Middle East. To the east, traders transported enslaved people towards the Red Sea and Indian Ocean. In the west, growing Atlantic markets demanded ever larger numbers of captives. The result was devastating. Human beings became one of the most valuable commodities in many trading networks. As profits increased, pressure increased. Captives had to come from somewhere. And increasingly, they came from neighboring communities. Slave raiding became one of the primary methods of acquiring captives throughout much of sub-Saharan Africa. What had once been occasional warfare became something darker. Wars were now fought specifically to capture people. Entire military campaigns were planned around obtaining prisoners. A village was no longer simply a rival. It became a source of wealth. Chapter 2, The Fear of the Horizon. Imagine living in a village during this period. You wake before sunrise. You tend your crops. You care for your family, yet every day you scan the horizon. You listen for unusual sounds. You watch distant dust clouds because a dust cloud could mean raiders, and raiders meant disaster. The attacks often came without warning. Horsemen would appear suddenly. Warriors would surround villages before alarms could spread. Homes would be burned, food stores seized. The strongest resistance would be crushed. Those who escaped fled into forests, mountains, or swamps. Those who were captured faced a terrible future. Entire communities lived under this constant threat. The fear became part of everyday life. Parents taught children where to hide. Villages built defensive walls. Lookouts were stationed on hills. Yet, often these measures were not enough. Chapter 3: The Rise of Militarized Kingdoms. As the slave trade expanded, some kingdoms adapted to the new reality. Military power became increasingly important. Kings who could field larger armies gained advantages over weaker neighbors. Some states expanded rapidly through warfare. Others found themselves forced to defend against repeated attacks. The result was an arms race. Kingdoms sought better weapons, stronger fortifications, larger armies, more horses, more soldiers, more power. Some rulers discovered that successful military campaigns could generate enormous wealth. Captives could be sold, weapons could be purchased, armies could be expanded, and the cycle continued. Several powerful states became deeply involved in these systems of warfare and captive taking. Chapter 4: Dahome's Expansion. One of the most powerful examples emerged in what is today Benin. The Kingdom of Dahomey became one of West Africa's most formidable military states. Its rulers built highly organized military machines. The kingdom expanded aggressively against neighboring territories. Military campaigns frequently produced large numbers of captives. Control of coastal trade routes increased Dahomey's influence and wealth. Entire communities experienced repeated attacks. Many were destroyed. Others were emptied of their populations. The kingdom's famous military forces became both feared and respected throughout the region. For neighboring people, Dahomey's expansion often meant uncertainty and danger. Its rise demonstrated how the economies of slavery could reshape political power. Chapter 5: The Fall of Smaller States. Not every kingdom could compete. Smaller states often suffered the most. Some lacked strong armies, others lacked defensive terrain. Many found themselves trapped between larger powers. A kingdom weakened by one attack became vulnerable to another. Population losses reduced agricultural production. Reduced agriculture weakened economies. Weaker economies produced weaker armies, and weaker armies invited more attacks. Some kingdoms disappeared entirely. Others survived only by paying tribute. Still others fled deeper into difficult terrain. The map of Africa was changing, not because of natural disasters, not because of famine, but because of human beings had become a valuable trade commodity. Chapter 6: Kanem, Borno, and the Sahel. Farther east, the great kingdom of Kanem, Borno occupied a strategic position near Lake Chad. For centuries, it played a major role in trans-Saharan commerce. Its rulers maintained powerful armies and controlled important trade routes. Slave raiding became closely connected to regional economic systems. Captives moved northward across the desert to markets throughout North Africa. The prosperity of the kingdom became tied to this trade network. Powerful states often survive by participating in systems that weaken their neighbors. The tragedy was that success for one kingdom frequently meant suffering for another. Chapter 7: A Continent of Refugees. As raids intensified, migration increased. Entire populations relocated. Communities abandoned fertile lands. Villages moved into forests. Others settled among mountains. Some sought protection behind walls. Others merged with larger populations. Millions lived as refugees long before the modern era. The movement of people altered languages, changed cultures, reshaped economies, and transformed demographics across vast regions. Areas once densely populated became sparsely inhabited. Regions once prosperous declined. Generations grew up knowing only insecurity. Chapter 8: The Human Cost. Statistics tell only part of the story. Behind every captive stood a family: a mother searching for a child, a husband searching for a wife, a village mourning missing neighbors. The damage extended beyond those captured. Farmers disappeared, craftsmen vanished, teachers were lost, leaders were taken, entire communities were stripped of productive members. Economic development suffered, social structures weakened, trust eroded. People became suspicious of strangers, sometimes even neighbors. Fear spread far beyond the actual raids. It poisoned daily life. Chapter 9: Resistance. Yet, Africa did not simply surrender. Many communities resisted. Some built defensive fortifications. Others formed alliances. Warriors defended villages. Kings united against common enemies. Communities developed early warning systems. In some regions, people retreated into terrain difficult for horsemen to reach. Others established fortified settlements designed specifically to resist slave raiders. Acts of resistance occurred constantly. Many fought and died, protecting their families. Their stories are rarely remembered, but they deserve to be. Chapter 10: The Legacy of Siege. The consequences of centuries of slave raiding cannot be measured fully. Entire regions lost millions of people. Political systems were destabilized. Economic development was interrupted. Kingdoms rose and fell under pressure created by the demand for captives. The slave trade was more than a commercial transaction. It was a force that transformed societies. It turned neighbors into enemies. It militarized kingdoms. It spread fear across continents, and it left scars that lasted generations. The story of Africa is not merely a story of victims, it is also a story of survival, of resistance, of resilience, of communities that endure despite overwhelming pressures. But to understand that resilience, we must first understand the siege they endured. In the next episode of The Forgotten Chains, we travel deep into the heart of the slave raiding system itself. Who were the raiders? How were attacks planned? What happened when a village was targeted? And how did ordinary people try to survive in a world where freedom could disappear overnight? Join us for episode 4, The Raiders. Because to understand the slave trade, we must first understand the men who hunted human beings.
As the fires of slave raids spread across the continent, a disturbing truth began to emerge. The men who captured the enslaved were often not the ones who profited the most. Behind every raid stood a network of merchants, middlemen, wealthy traders, and political alliances that transformed human lives into commodities. And oceans through a vast commercial machine driven by greed. How did this system become so organized? Who negotiated the sales?
What role did local rulers, foreign merchants,
and trading empires play in keeping the market supplied for centuries?
In our next episode, the brokers of bondage will follow the money
and uncover the powerful interests that kept the chains unbroken. The raiders captured the people, but the brokers built the business. Join us next week on The Forgotten Chains. Like, subscribe, and share as we continue uncovering the history that the world too often overlooks.